Well, it's the Lions and the Sydney Swans. The 2023 runner-up, the Brisbane Lions Football Club. They've taken the long route, the long path to get here from zip and 3. They were 5-6-1. They went on a vicious and ferocious run to get to the 2024 AFL Grand Final. While Sydney, it's been relatively smooth sailing for them. Number one seed, top dogs, finished on top of the ladder. Only had a small hiccup late in the season, but certainly got themselves corrected. And of course, they were beaten in the 2022 AFL Grand Final. So it's last year's runner-up versus the runner-up the year previous to that. So two teams out for revenge. Two teams looking to avenge desperately. One was desperately unlucky, and one was absolutely white from the park in 2022. Brisbane and Sydney, the Lions and the Swans, a non-Victorian grand final. It might upset those from Melbourne or those who love the VFL and the VFA days, but the A in AFL stands for Australian. And that's what we've got. Sydney Swans fans, South Melbourne fans will emerge and converge on the city, whilst we'll see the same from the old Fitzroy Football Club fans and those who travel down from the Sunshine State. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to getting to Melbourne on Friday. I'll be there Thursday and Friday. So looking forward to getting up the highway and getting stuck in with the fans of both clubs. But let's rip in. So I've broken the game down into a few categories, a few different ways I can see this game being run and won. I'm going to start with Sydney, the number one seed, the big boys. Their game style and their game is pretty to watch. So the categories I'm going to go with for both teams: coaching, game style, plan B, the stars, and why that team will win the grand final. So I'll start with the Swannies. Coaching, John Longmire. Forget his grand final record. Overall, superb coach. He's hard-nosed. He's gritty. He certainly comes from that Paul Roux style of coaching where it's all about defending first, but credit to the man. Credit to the man. He has evolved and he's coaching to the team that he's got. He's coaching to the personnel and the skill sets that they bring to the table. In his heart of hearts, he probably still wants to play that really hard-nosed 1v1 defensive style of football. The Swans, when we were planning to play against them, you'd say, well, you can get it inside 50 against them a lot, but it's hard to score. They defend from the back. They work hard. They play one-on-one. They play very much like a local football team would. Them and their man, and whichever player can come out on top. If we've got more of ours coming out on top than they do theirs, we'll get the job done. But they've evolved. They've got so much talent, and I'll get to their stars in a minute. And you've got to give credit to Longmire for that. He's got a great coaching panel. The McVeigh brothers, Dean Cox, of course, is talked about as a future head coach in the not-too-distant future. So their coaching box is strong. They've been there before. John Longmire, obviously, is a premiership coach, but he's had a few defeats as well. So the coaching, no issue for Sydney. Their game style, how does it stack up? So for the first 12, 14 weeks of the season, no one could stop them. Untouchable. That ball movement, and I spoke about it on the Channel 7 AFL socials earlier in the year. Go and check it out on 7AFL on Instagram and X. Their ability, the Swans, to come from half back and use any one of about 12 great kicks of the footy to kick it short, to turn, to face the game, face their goals, and quickly use that man who can only stand still on the mark, take a couple of steps to the right or left and hit the next target, and then look for that handball receive. So to find Goulden streaming past or find Blakey running past on a halfback flank. Ollie Florent kicks the ball really well. Heaney's a great kick. Papley's very accurate with his skills. Roberts and Campbell can both thump the ball as left footers. There are so many players on that Sydney football team who can kick the ball really, really well all over the field. Even their big guys. You think about Logan McDonald. He's a really good and neat field kick. Hayden McLean doesn't make too many errors by foot. They don't have anyone in that team that you are panicked when they get the footy in their hands. They're all capable and they're all able to do what needs to be done with ball in hand. Their game style is fantastic. It's great to watch and it's been very successful, but it had been taken away. So teams went to school on their game style. When they were so far in front, you think about these full-time opposition scouts for teams. They might have a spare half an hour, a spare hour. What do you think they're doing? Why is Sydney so far in front? Why is Sydney 3 games ahead of everyone else on top of the ladder? Let me go and break down their game style. So teams became more and more prepared to come up against them and to combat their game style. So we saw teams late in the year and even throughout the finals at different stages just clog the corridor. So don't give the Swans the ball we use through the corridor because they'll cut you up. Once they get one short, uncontested mark, once they get a handball receive, it's all over. It's all over. So don't give them the inside part of the ground. Don't give them anything through the middle. Make them go wide. Just hedge a little bit. So tread water. Don't go at Nick Blakey and get stepped and then create the overlap play. Make him kick it wide. Make Errol Goulden kick it wide. Don't give up handball receives through the middle part of the ground, particularly between the arcs at the SCG where you can't stop them once they get that going. So that's their challenge. And that's why plan B is one of the categories in this game. Does Sydney have a plan B? So when they've had that element of their game taken away, they've had to kick the ball long down the line and just cop their medicine, take their medicine a little bit. Now, Amati and McDonald and McLean and Grundy, none of those guys are reputable for taking big, strong marks down the line. None of those guys really do that. Grundy's not necessarily, a big mark taker down the line. McDonald likes to be a lead up forward, a moving forward. Amati the same. He's got great athleticism, Amati, but he doesn't really come up and meet the ball as yet. And McLean is quite similar as well. He'll stand under a pack or stand at a contest, but he won't run and jump and split a pack or take a big mark too often. So when you can force them long down the line, you're taking away their absolute strength, but you're forcing them to go into a situation that they are perhaps not best equipped to win and succeed at. So their plan B is going to be fascinating. They'll be hoping they don't need to go to plan B, but if they do, that'll be a big watch. Now, the stars for the Swans. The stars for the Swans, and they're all around the ball. Isaac Heaney. It's been dominant in 2 finals thus far. Completely and utterly dominant. You've got Chad Warner, who seemingly knows and thinks no one can tackle him. He'll pick up a ground ball or get a handball receive and take a bounce in congestion. He plays the game with a smile on his face. He's got energy and enthusiasm. You've got Errol Goulden, who it's one thing to tag him, another thing to be able to run with him, but I've got a match up for him. I'll get to that shortly. You've got Tom Papley, who I'd be using up around the ball early in this game. Don't leave Tom Papley for 15 minutes standing ahead of the footy, not getting a look at the ball. Bring him up to the contest. Bring his man up. Whoever plays on a Papley, whether it's a Starcevic wants to stand 50 metres from goal, back shoulder to Papley, see the ball, see Papley. He's comfortable in that situation. But Papley can take Starcevic into a stoppage and lose him around the ball. Get on the fly. Teams call the extra forward who comes up to a stoppage a flash or a striker or a dasher, whatever you want to call it. You can see it, right? Papley and these guys. Nick Martin does it occasionally for the Bombers. These guys who come up and be an extra. Ben Keys does it for Adelaide on occasion. And they're there to create chaos. They're there to help the midfielders get the ball in your half of the ground. I'd be doing that with Papley. They've got stars. They're all around the footy, and they're going to need to get the job done. Why the Swans will win? I think it will be their ability to kick the ball through Brisbane. Brisbane have gotten so much better at defending with all 18 players. About 3 or 4 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago even, they'd often ask the mids and defenders to defend as a group of 12. Their forwards would often stay close to goal. They'd get detached and they wouldn't help in team defence. Now they get up the ground. Lohman and Cameron and Bailey and Rayner, they get up the ground and they help defend. So Sydney, if they're to win the game, they'll be able to sizzle that ball and chip and find spaces on the big, wide MCG, and they'll pull apart Brisbane's defence. And then they'll start to use Goulden and Heaney and Rowbottom and Campbell and Roberts through the middle part of the ground. And as Harris Andrews is trying to retreat, as Jack Payne's looking for the long ball inside 50, or Ryan Lester's doing the same, those forwards, those mobile forwards can get on the move, get on the lead, and come up at the footy. That's how Sydney can win this game. Their opponents, the Brisbane Lions, most jumped off. I can proudly put my hand up and say I never jumped off. And I've loved the way Chris Fagan, which is the first category, coaching. I've loved the way Chris Fagan has treated and respected and stuck with his group. He stuck fat with them. They were zipping 3. They were 5-6 and a draw. They had a horrible loss on Anzac night against the GWS Giants. They're uncompetitive in the second half. And that was seemingly a turning point for them. I've heard Brisbane Lions players say that game was a turning point in their season. But Fagan never jumped ship. He never gave up on them. He never went outwardly and criticised any of his players. He looked after them. He didn't really drop anyone of any note. We often see coaches make that big hammer blow. Right, he's out. I'm going to make a statement. Peter Wright was dropped. Other players this year have been dropped from teams to try and make a statement. But so often, I think it backfires. I think you've got to back in your guys who have done the job for 4 or 5 years. I mean, are you any chance of getting more from someone out of the VFL than an Eric Hipwood, who many wanted dropped this year? Are you any chance of getting more from the person in the VFL? And you might say, well, Logan Morris has come in and done a good job, but he's done a good job beside Eric Hipwood, not in place of. I was down in Tasmania for a function earlier in the week, and I had the pleasure of speaking to Grant Fagan, Chris Fagan's brother, who in his own right coached a heap of premierships down in Tasmania. Is one of the most well-known coaches in that state. And he just talked about, and he and Chris speak on the phone a lot about footy and this, that, and the other. And you could tell the stability of the man, able to stay calm, think his way through situations. It's been, I think, Chris Fagan's best ever season as coach. Whether they win it or not on the weekend, I guess he'll be judged accordingly. But I'll tell you what, he's coached beautifully this year. Game style, how does the Brisbane Lions game style stack up? I think they're really well suited to playing good footy at the MCG. Now, I know for a while they struggled to get the job done at the MCG in regular season games, excuse me, and in some finals. But they've turned that tide well and truly. Well and truly. The prelim final against Geelong, the grand final, one kicked the other way in their premiers. They've knocked out Melbourne in finals before at the MCG. So they've absolutely passed and ticked that box for mine. And their game style is suited to the massive size and space at the MCG. So they want to take a heap of marks. I said on this show last week, and thanks to those who watched, that if they took 110 or more marks, they'd win the game. Well, they took 111 and they won the game. So I was right, only just by 1 mark and a few points, but they won the game because the ground can be made big, right? When Brisbane get the ball, you can spread. Keep your wingers wide, keep your half forwards a long way away, stretch out some of your deeper forwards and make the ground big. Make the opposition have to defend in a lot of space. In the first half last week, Geelong were able to clog up the MCG, make it small, and the Brisbane Lions players didn't spread enough. They didn't get away from the ball carrier. A lot of AFL teams talk about attack and defence. So when you've got the ball, the aim is to make the ground as big as possible. Not so big that you can't defend if you turn it over, but big enough to give everyone space to find these uncontested marks and these easy avenues to goal that Brisbane like to use. And they've got kickers now. They've got really neat kickers in Zorko and Rayner, Bailey, McCluggage, Neil. These guys, Ashcroft, they're really neat kicks of the footy. And they're really in sync trying to find and create these short, uncontested marks. Now, they got called to play on a few times last week, but so many times they're able to just find one more. Make the opposition defend for another 10 seconds. See if someone will fall asleep. in team defense for the opposition. Okay, there's another mark. There's another mark. Then all of a sudden, you're at halfway, you get your handball receive, or you can roll quickly off the mark, and you can get a great entry inside forward 50 and give that dangerous forward line a great look at it. So I like their game style. In fact, I love their game style. I probably like it in a grand final more than Sydney's, which is a little more risky, and I think a little more vulnerable to extreme pressure. Plan B for Brisbane. And this is the part that has really emerged and evolved in the finals. So their comebacks, 44 points against GWS, 25 points against the Cats, have been on the back of them needing to make subtle adjustments in the game, particularly at halftime, which is where you need to give Chris Fagan and his coaching staff immense credit. So they've been more willing, when they've been desperate, to kick the ball a bit longer, to risk the ball getting on the ground in space, but knowing that guys like Rayner and Bailey and Lohman and Charlie Cameron and even McKenna from halfback, Ashcroft, Berry, McCluggage, these guys can run, and they're powerful and they're strong. They've been able to win contests both on the ground and in general play. And when the ball gets a bit more chaotic, when the game becomes a bit more chaotic, it suited Brisbane quite well. So I think they've got a really good balance. Their A game, their plan A, is certainly to build the ball up, to find a few uncontested marks, get 3, 4, 5 uncontested marks, and then attack the game. But if they're forced to play this game on the weekend in chaos, they'll be fine. They'll be just fine. In fact, it might suit them more than the Sydney Swans. The stars for Brisbane are a little more spread. So I've got so much time for Harris Andrews. I love the way he plays. I reckon he's kept them afloat early in the season. His stability behind the ball, his ability to make others walk a bit taller down back. I love what he brings to the table. And Sydney will have to tag him. Either Luke Parker or maybe a Hayden McLean will be asked to go and stand with him. They'll be tagging Harris Andrews. He was tagged in last year's grand final, and he'll be tagged in this year's grand final. Whether you can get it done or not is another story. Through the middle of the ground, they've got a 2-time Brownlow medalist. He'll get tagged. He'll be sat on. I think Rowbottom probably goes to him, or they might tag him with James Jordan from outside the centre square, but Neil's so good around centre bounce that you may want to have his direct opponent with him at all times. You've got Zorko as the All-Australian rebounding defender. Seen some commentary around about him costing them and giving up goals and this, that, and the other. He's not back there to stop goals. He's there to create for his team. He's a defender by name, not by nature. And there are a heap of them. Most teams are striving for one. And he can do it beautifully. He's a great kick. He's aggressive. He understands the times of the game when he should be aggressive, when he should just be finding the easy short mark. I love what he brings to the table. And we know the forward line is star-studded. We know about Charlie and Big Joe and Lohman, who's emerged, and Archie. We know about these guys ahead of the footy. They're a dangerous group. They're a dangerous commodity. Just want to why they'll win. One more for Brisbane. I think they can win because they're hardened. They're rolling. They've got explosive momentum. They've got emotion behind them. And they were this close last year. Now, I know Sydney are back for revenge. They were embarrassed on grand final day 2 years ago. But Brisbane had one hand on the cup last year. I saw an interview with Jared Berry and Mitch Cleary on Channel 7 last week after the game. He was highly emotional about the opportunity to get back and make amends for some of the mistakes he feels he made in the grand final last year. Of course, he gave away two 50-metre penalties, one to steal Sidebottom, which Sidebottom went and kicked a long goal and helped seal the deal for Collingwood. And he got emotional in the interview in a moment where you'd expect everyone to be hoo-haring and carrying on and yahooing. He was quite emotional about it. You could see the tears starting to build. Mitch Cleary was jabbing away at him, trying to just niggle and needle away. But I reckon they're just so hard and they're so steeled for this moment. They're a better team than last year. No disrespect to Link McCarthy or Darcy Gardner or an ex-teammate of mine, Jared Lyons. No disrespect to those guys. But Lohman and Morris and Ashcroft, he's the key. These new guys in this team have added so much. They've got Jack Payne. They didn't have him this time last year. I think they're a better football team. I think they're better placed to win this game. And they almost won it last year. They almost beat Collingwood in front of 100,000 screaming fans, probably 85,000 screaming Collingwood fans. The ruck. I just want to quickly touch on the ruck because it's a big story. Of course, no Oscar McInerney. Brodie Grundy gets back to a grand final after he played in one for Collingwood and then had to watch as his Collingwood teammates went and won the premiership, or former teammates went and won the premiership last year. He now gets an opportunity, and he gets an opportunity without Oscar McInerney standing in his way. But Darcy Fort's as good a matchup as you'll find for Brodie Grundy. And I mean across the league. My only concern with Big Darcy, Big Fortress, as they call him, is conditioning and whether it gives out on him late in the game. If he has to play 80, 85%, say Brisbane get an injury somewhere and Big Darcy's expected or asked to play a lot of ruck time, does he blow out late in the game? Because Grundy won't. He'll keep working. He'll keep grinding. But Fort is more than happy to lock up, to wrestle, to grapple, to scrap, to make it ugly. So he's a very, very good matchup for Brodie Grundy. I reckon Chris Fagan, even though he'd like to have his big man, Big O, in the team, I don't think he'd be losing much sleep about the ruck situation. Now, prediction time. Prediction time. I picked Brisbane to win the premiership at the start of 2024. Why would I get off now? It's been a bumpy road, a very bumpy road to get to this point, but this is where I'm landing. I'm going to say Brisbane by 10 points, 107-97. I think it'll be a high-scoring game. It might be a little scrappy and pressurised early, but this game will open up. These two teams want to play a brand of footy that lends itself to space and excitement and free-flowing footy. So 107-97, Brisbane by 10 points. Joe, Charlie, Zach Bailey, I reckon they all kick 3 goals each. I reckon Berry does a great job on Isaac Heaney or Errol Goulden. Berry will go to one of those two guys, mark my words. I think Big Darcy Fort can almost break even with Brodie Grundy in the ruck. And Harris Andrews is my man, is my pick for Norm Smith medal. He's about 50-1, if you don't mind. I'd also have something on Will Ashcroft. He's the midfielder for Brisbane that I think is going to get under the radar. So Neil might get tagged. McCluggage might get some attention. Berry and Dunkley will have roles defensively. Is Will Ashcroft the one who missed last year's grand final, who gets off the chain and has 24, 25 disposals and kicks a goal or two and jumps up and pinches the Norm Smith medal? So there's my pick. Go you Brizzy Lions. Now, just a quick one on the Brownlow. Of course, it was held earlier in the week. Shorten it up, for the love of God. Went way too long. It starts too late, so it starts at 8 o'clock. That's too late for a start. I accept you want to have the red carpet and all this, that, and the other, and it brings eyeballs to the show that wouldn't necessarily be there otherwise. That's fine. Start it earlier. Start the count earlier. The mark of the year and the goal of the year can be moved to another evening. Give them out whenever you want. They're not needed. We don't need bands. We don't need singing. Loved what Angus Brayshaw brought to the table, the retiring group of players. That's fantastic. The Jim Steins Award can stay, but those two awards take 10 minutes, 15 minutes max. Get rid of the other stuff. Get through the votes quicker. Shorten her up. We were giving out the medal at 11:15 last night. No good. Kids can't be watching that. Kids can't be watching that. My other gripe is the amount of votes these guys are getting. It is out of control. Nick Dacos has comfortably broken the all-time record for votes in a season, and he's been beaten by 7 votes. Just wrap your head around that. Nick Dacos has surpassed the all-time record for votes, 36. He picked up 38, and he's been belted. He's been beaten by 7 if you don't mind. Patrick Cripps, 45 votes. Dacos got votes in 18 games. Cripps got votes in 17 games. I'm just not sure these guys are that dominant. I'm not sure they're that dominant. I've got no doubt Cripps deserved it. I picked him. I thought he had a sensational season. Absolutely deserving. Dacos would have been deserving as well. But fair income, these guys are getting 45 votes. Quite incredible. Congrats to Patrick Cripps. Good luck to the two teams playing in the grand final this week, and the Brisbane Lions Football Club and the Sydney Swans Football Club. I can't wait for the game. I think it's got the potential to be one of the great grand finals of all time. Thanks to those who have been watching this show on YouTube each and every week. Not going anywhere. AFL trade period kicks off, at least on radio, on Monday morning, straight after the grand final. We've got the free agency period and the AFL trade period. Going to be busy. I'm on the AFL trade afternoon or trade evenings, whatever it's called these days, with Damien Barrett and Brad Johnson. So make sure you listen to that 3 till 6 p.m. on Trade Radio, however you want to get that these days, the AFL app or on the SEN app, I believe. Hopefully that's correct. But I'll also jump on here and do a little bit of trade stuff myself. I won't give everything to Damo and Jono. I'll keep a few things for the YouTube channel. So thanks to those who have been watching. Thanks to those who have subscribed and liked and rated and all that sort of stuff. Good luck to Brisbane. Good luck to Sydney in the 2024 AFL Grand Final. Both teams deserve it, but only one team's going to get it.